Welcome to the Slog, where we discuss the absurd, the political, and the corporate in the only language America understands it, sarcasm.
Hi. Here we are again. So things have changed. We're not talking necessarily mental health in the workplace anymore. We're kind of going down a new road of what we see as the slog, and it's our frustration concerning the political atmosphere, our culture, the American culture that we're living in, as well as our workplaces. We want to bring it all together and have that discussion, right? So I know you and I talk about it all the time. We talk about different things that are happening in our friend groups, different things that people say that drive us nuts. So hopefully we can jump into it just because we want to make things better, right?
Yeah.
As you just said, we don't hate America. We feel we're patriotic and we don't want to give up on what's happening, but man, are we mad. Or at least I know I am. I'm frustrated.
And, it's interesting. Last season, we talked a lot about, or we alluded to the macro element, taking the lessons we were discussing about the workplace and what the slog is like within organizational cultures, and always being able to see how that expands out to our larger society, our larger culture in terms of outcomes. And I think one of the frustration points for me was I always felt like just talking about the workplace was a bit limiting because our minds were always going to that larger picture. When you can see things happening with your friends, your family, your neighbors, people that we talk to all the time, and you're able to see how those micro things are affecting the greater culture, it's hard to stay quiet about it. And when you and I talk, we generally tend to have a little bit of a pitch. We don't hate America. We just really want America to stop punching herself in the face, which is what we think is happening with a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think we kind of are on one end of the political spectrum, but we're really not. I think beyond anything, we're relatively moderate, and we want to find the evidence that supports a way of thinking. We're willing to change because we're starting this anew. We're willing to look at all of it and go wherever it takes us and have the discussions. If we piss people off or each other off, it's okay.
Yeah. We've already agreed that conflict is sometimes a really good thing. And so I'm okay with it. No, I don't think any subject should be immune from discussion, especially as it relates to what our common shared interests are as Americans and humans. True health requires that we take an honest assessment, and, being thorough about what we discuss is part of that honesty.
Most recently, I've been getting whiplash from my 401k. As we watch the markets and the talk of tariffs, I've gotten to a point where I have a tough time even listening to the news. I listen to podcasts. I'll take in news here and there, but things are so biased and it's just so out of control. It's hard to filter the information. And even from our friends, we can hear it as they bring up certain things. You can hear the talking points. It's just mind-boggling how quickly somebody grabs onto something that was just said by Steve Bannon on You Name the Show or whomever. It's just driving me nuts.
We've talked about the human nature element of how and why people think the way they do. And one of the things that we talked about in depth is how, as humans, we're always looking for an economy of thought, so to speak. We want to know that we're right about something or that we're informed in the quickest, easiest way possible. I think that really leads to people hearing a soundbite or a talking point and then just accepting that wholesale as, well, that's my opinion. That's how I feel about it. Or that's the truth. As you said, it's just not that easy to take information in that way. You have to have a really good filter. You have to be really discerning about the source of the information. What are the intentions behind how that information is being presented? Is that information true? That's really hard in this post-information age we're living in, I think.
So let's take on something right now. It's driving me nuts, the tariff thing, right?
The tariffs are driving me nuts too.
Everything I've read, I don't know what the economist Peter Navarro is saying. It sounds ridiculous to me because this is a guy who wrote a book and utilized a made-up person to support his theories within the book.
Wait, are you talking about the esteemed Ron Vara?
I think that's what the name was.
Which is an anagram of his name. Navarro.
It drives me nuts that this is the person that's giving economic insight to the president of the United States. And really all of this, I see things through such a mental health type of lens. I look at the president, and this is a person who's a narcissist. I think it's crazy that more people aren't saying it over and over again, because those people that have personalities like that are driven by certain things. This man is driven by narcissism. He's driven by leverage. This is how he sees the world. That is all that there is manipulation. He looks out at tariffs, which are these things that, it's historically been done in many cases, in many different circumstances. However, what's happening right now is on steroids. It's out of control. And it really seems completely arbitrary. Even when they looked at the reasoning behind the tariffs that were thrown out there, it doesn't even make any sense. It's not about tariffs. It's about our trade deficit, right? Let's stop and think about it for a second. A trade deficit would exist because we're the much wealthier nation. Of course, you're going to have a trade deficit with people because they're able to produce things, manufacture things at such a lower price than we are. So of course there's going to be trade deficits, huge trade deficits. Part of this is to bring manufacturing back to America without increasing prices. I don't understand the logic behind any of this. I don't know that anybody believes, or at least not very many people believe, that this is somehow going to bring a ton of manufacturing back to America. If it does, that just means we're finding a way to do it cheaper.
Right.
How is that going to happen? It's not making any sense to me, and I don't think it's making a lot of sense to many economists. These are people that look, the president is standing on one thing, and he sees himself, number one, as a victim, and he sees America as a victim. I'm here to tell you, we're not the victims. We're the wealthiest nation ever. How are we the victims for anything? Rarely are we victims, but yet now you're sending these tariffs out there that are actually only going to impact Americans. We're the ones who are going to pay for it. Don't people understand that? Why is that so hard to understand?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and I don't think you need to necessarily look to the greatest economic minds to see that this is a bad policy. The markets are telling us they're bad. And you mentioned the 401k. Anyone who's had the courage to look at their savings,
I don't even want to look at it right now.
Right? That's obviously the markets are responding. This kind of all over the board, arbitrary, and frankly, illogical set of policies that ultimately, as I understand it, tariffs really are, they're just a tax on the consumer. The country that upon whom the tariff was levied isn't paying.
And think of what we are. Obviously, we're not experts in importing, exporting, or anything. I think we're talking this through to try to figure out what the hell is going on. So imagine what this is going to do when you have understandings with allies. You've tried to make an economic base for the world, and now you've just went and shook it up and said, no, that's not the way we're doing it anymore. It's, I'm going to make you bow to me. Right. Basically, I'm going to make you suck me off to be able to trade with me. You're going to have to give me something. And that's because I perceive you, in this case, the president perceives that he is the victim somehow, and that this is going to rectify things. These just don't have implications for even the now or the next 4 years as he's president. These have implications. We've just pissed off allies.
Right.
We're going after everybody. This doesn't even make any sense. This has upset, understandings for generations at the very least. And I think it's making America look terrible.
Right.
Again, we're not the victim. I'm sick of people saying that we're the victim. We're not the victim. How could we possibly be the victim?
But that victim ideology certainly seems to underpin a lot of this administration.
That's what narcissists do.
Yeah. So this grievance-based politics just plays right into this. Well, I'm just going to slap tariffs and beat everybody over the head because we're the big victim here. And that's just not how it works. This tariff move is just performative toughness. The tough guy thing. That's what narcissists do, right? They're always the bully.
Why is this so obvious to me that this guy is a mob boss? Because he's a bully. Let's get straight to it. And those who are aligning with him, they're enabling the bully.
Behind the bully,
yep,
while he picks on the little kid. And in this case, the little kid are smaller economies, countries with, less wealth that we have trade agreements with for a number of reasons. It's not just economic. There's also national security.
There's reasons that those things exist. Again, who hurts? Consumers, businesses, farmers. truckers, you name it. It goes on and on.
Who really gets hurt, especially if these tariffs go into effect, as many of them seem to be, it's the consumers and it's people who don't have the massive amounts of wealth to weather the storm. People who make less money, people who aren't in that top 1% of earners pay a disproportionate amount of their dispensable income
Absolutely.
or discretionary income on goods and services.
Mhm.
Right. And those become more expensive for us. And you see who the greatest harm goes to. So yes, it is performative toughness. It's kind of like the guy who goes to the gym and skips leg day. Big chest, but no like foreign policy. That's what is going on.
This is also propped up on nationalism. Nationalism in itself is a strange idea. There's a balance to everything. And I think we should be proud to be an American because you have healthy outcomes.
Because we're
not doing the right things. We've decided that we're going to protect human rights, that we're going to stand for free speech.
Or have a U.S. aid, which provides humanitarian relief to millions of people.
That's why you buy into nationalism.
Yeah.
I think that's gotten out of control. That's another episode. Focus nationalism and the road that goes down. It's not that we're not American. We both did our time in the army and ended up in some pretty crappy place. It's just we're anti-dumb.
You know, and that's
Think of
slogan.
We're anti-dumb. We're anti-dumb.
I'm not a Democrat. I'm just anti-dumb.
For those of you who don't know us that well, we have a group. We have a text chain that involves, I don't know, 15 or 20 people. At the very least, incredibly entertaining. It has a cross-section of America in it. Everybody's brought together by everything from fantasy football. Some of us know each other from the military college where we grew up, but it's interesting. It gets into political discussions. We try not to because the wounds are so open and sore that you can't touch that third rail oftentimes. Recently, it got into an argument about tariffs. It got into all sorts of things about this administration and what's going on. And, you know, it got down to, at one point, one of the people, you know, calling one of the other guys a dipshit. My initial response to that was, we just can't start calling names. But on the other hand, I'm sick of it too. At some point, we're anti-dumb. At what point do I get to say that you're in a cult? How much evidence do I have to show you that is good? You're not going to. It doesn't matter. You're just a dipshit. At some point, I can't say it more than that. And I know that person is going to hear this and know we're talking about them. At this point, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going to back down anymore. That's how frustrated I am at where we are in America and with our friend groups and all that stuff. Our culture, no. We need to be able to say that. Nope. Here's the deal. You're not seeing it right. You're buying into this narcissist that's been elected.
Isn't that a huge component of Donald Trump's appeal to his supporters? He is the proxy for all of their resentment and victimhood or perceived victimhood.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
He says exactly what needs to be said. Like you've heard from so many people who are in that MAGA world or in that bubble, they love him because in some weird way, he's like their messiah. To say that it's a cult, I don't think is hyperbole. Nobody wants to go there because you don't want to piss people off, but maybe we need to be pissing people off to try to shake them out this cult mentality they have. I don't know how else to say it. I don't think just because you're a Trump supporter, you are a bad person. But supporting Trump is objectively bad.
I agree. So that's where my line is drawn.
Right.
And it was even said on our text chain, right? He's
Yes.
like, I don't think you're a bad person. And I love that person.
You just can't say dumb shit.
You just can't. And you got to start looking at these other things.
Right.
There is way more to this. There is a fine line there. I know it. I love those people. But you're right. I've got to the point where I'm not pulling punches anymore. And I'm not pulling punches because what that guy doesn't understand is that he's harming me. He's harming my family. He's harming my friends. He's harming my nation and my culture. And instead is going, oh, well, this is why we need to have these tariffs. No, you don't.
No, I don't think any leading economist says these tariffs are a good idea. So I'm waiting for the objective empirical evidence that these tariffs are going to result in some great outcome, some golden gilded age of America. And there just is no evidence to support that other than what's coming out of one guy's mouth.
And they'll continue to say it and they'll keep saying, wait, just wait, just wait. And this is going to have poor outcomes for decades that we don't see. And it might show in the near term some cherry-picked good outcomes. But I cannot, for the life of me, and I haven't heard one respected economist say this is a great idea. I think even Elon Musk has stood up and went, hey, well, wait a minute. Do you not realize you're going to end up hurting me?
One interesting thing, this has got me thinking, and I've heard it from several people that I've had this discussion with, is there's been a mentality or an opinion that they'll share, which is, well, I'm not retired. I'm not living off my 401k. Who cares? And all I can think of when I hear statements like that, or only a small percentage of Americans actually participate in the stock market. Really what they're saying is they don't care that people who aren't in the stock market or people who are using their 401k or retirement portfolios to live and plan out the remaining 10 to 15 years, which might include long-term health care, those types of things. They don't care about them. That's what they're saying. So there's a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion, and a super selfish, almost, dare I say it, narcissistic element to statements like, well, it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
Right. It's not my problem. I'm not going to retire for another 20 years. Well, you're being an asshole because there's people who are retiring right now. Our parents' generation, they don't have income from a job because they're retired. Where do you think their money's coming from? It's coming from what they have in securities, stocks, bonds, etc. And when these tariffs, and again, it's the freaking Wild West, nobody knows. There's no rationality to any of this. And as irrational as the market is, it becomes even more irrational when nobody knows what the hell is going on. How secure do you think an older American might feel right now in their retirement savings? I'm asking people in my life who love this country to put their money where their mouth is and love this country. That means you love the person who doesn't have any stocks but is going to be affected by these tariffs anyway. You love the person who does have stocks and is using that to live off of in retirement. I'm asking for a kinder, gentler America because there's a plurality of us who voted for Donald Trump and another 4 years of being the schoolyard bully. And that to me,
Set up for the future, not to be a nation of a rule of law, but for a tit for tat type of thing.
Sure.
This is a pay to play. This is the world he is setting up. That's how he sees it. It's very black and white. Again, it's a victim mentality. It's a leverage type of way of thinking. You're a bully. You use what you got. That's what he's doing. I cannot see for the life of me how that could be remotely healthy for her future.
Yeah. Well, I think we've made our position on this quite clear. We're not in favor of the tariffs. We don't think the tariffs are good. Neither of our 401ks would disagree with us. But let's talk about the mental health aspect too, because we talk a lot about cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling we have when information. Well, I think it's important if we're going to call people out for being dumb, let's help them be less dumb. And one way is coping with cognitive dissonance.
It is. Yeah.
Right. And there's a few things that I think humans do pretty naturally or instinctively to cope with dissonance. They will alter their beliefs to conform or to maintain their position. They will outright dismiss or ignore any evidence that butts up against their belief. Or third, and perhaps most problematically, they will minimize the importance of the belief so that the stakes are lower. And I think that's what you see a lot of people doing with this. When you say, who cares that Trump announced the tariffs and within a week, the stock market lost 10%? I'm not retired. I'll be fine. I'll make it all back and then some. You're minimizing the importance of what's happening to essentially not have to change your beliefs.
Nope.
And I think what we've been saying on the slog since the get-go is it's okay to change your belief. It's the healthiest thing you can do.
Please, someone give me the evidence that I can grasp that makes me change my belief. I'm not hearing it anywhere. I listen to both sides. I don't see it. There's one side that's so clearly biased or is utilizing that dissonance. They won't listen. They don't want to. And it's for all sorts of reasonings, right? We can get into that. That fluidity of thought is incredibly important. I think our entire culture has been hijacked by, in this case, one man. If you can't, what have I always said? You can't tell someone that they're in a cult. They won't accept it. They won't. Look at the research behind cults and understand what that means. They even came out with this Trump derangement syndrome. That goes back to the arguments that we get into, which I say, if you find yourself saying, not me, you, most of the time you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's such a middle schooler type response.
It's adolescent.
It is adolescent.
It's not me, it's you. No, it's not me. It's you.
And we need to understand that's what you're saying.
When people say anything negative about Donald Trump or his administration or his policies, especially his policies, you can't even criticize it without being accused, oh, it's not us, it's you. You have Trump derangement syndrome. No, I don't.
I'm looking at evidence.
It's pretty clear to me that he's not acting in the best interest of the nation, that he does not respect the rule of law. And also, he's not very smart.
Even that, they're cherry picking what they see. On his side, you'll hear people saying how brilliant he is.
He is the dear leader.
Right. And that's part of what you were just talking about as far as dissonance.
I guarantee if the guy does work out, I don't think he does. I think he has some weird thing about working out and only so many heartbeats per lifetime. And had a big chest. I guarantee the guy never does legs. Tiny legs.
Right.
No way he does. Anyway, that's my...
No, that's true.
Well, shoot, man. Well, I don't think we're going to solve the tariff issue, but hopefully, people understand. You got to be able to see it. It's out there. Culling information from the internet and from media right now is extraordinarily difficult. We have a tough time with it. But if you're a voting American, you have a responsibility to your fellow Americans, to the country that I hope you say you love. I don't have any friends who say they hate America. Do you? All my friends seem to love this country. They just have a different idea about what loving this country means. I just want to make an appeal to those who think that they're making America great again by alienating our enemies, starting a trade war for no reason.
Alienating our allies.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's
cozying up to our enemies in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you think is making America great again, then I don't know that you do love the country, at least not in the way I do.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that makes America great, the thing I always tried to keep as my true north when we were in the military, was that there were a lot of things about America at that time that I didn't agree with, that I wasn't happy about. But I love this country for what it stood for. And right now, what we stand for it's not that.
No.
You have to be able to see it.
Yeah. As you're saying that too, things pop into my head. And I think this is part of that conditioning that leads you to beliefs. I remember growing up and even how Lee Greenwood would come on and I'd want to tear up just listening to it.
Yep.
I think things have changed. At some point, I opened my eyes. And if there's anything to take from this is that I started listening to the evidence to find balance and to understand. I tell you what, TJ, if I'm ever in a cult, keep browbeating me with, you're in a cult. Okay? Do it. I'll eventually come around to it. I'll eventually go, am I in a cult? What am I doing? I want you to tell me. I really want to know so that I can get the hell out of the cult. I think that's what we're saying. I want people to understand that in a lot of ways we were, and that's why I use Lee Greenwood as a starting point for understanding that I used to sit there and hell, I'd go to a baseball game and put my hand over my heart and just feel those feelings. And I think that is absolutely changed in a good way because I look at it from a healthy perspective. Nationalism should not be over the top. It has to be kept in check or else you are in a cult. And I still believe, and I think that's what's incredible about our Constitution and this government is that it was set and our founders knew that we needed to find balance.
Yeah.
That we needed to be proud of our nation, but also skeptical.
Yeah.
That we needed to tell ourselves both sides all the time. And that's what we should always be doing is going, and when what Trump is doing now in utilizing leverage and setting up a system that is not about rule of law, but is about you pay to play or you need to grovel to me and then we'll make a deal type of thing, that sets in place dangerous precedents.
Especially around.
And why can't people see that? But anyway, it's about balance, and that doesn't allow balance, right?
Because compromise isn't just about seeing things in a different way. Compromise can also mean finding balance.
Right.
Our constitutional republic was literally designed through a process of a series of compromises. And over the years, those compromises have changed according to, the societal needs, to the greater global picture, right? Like the founders gave us the mechanism by which we could compromise and change. Right now, I feel like, we're being pulled into camps where there's a demand for loyalty or some type of expectation.
That's a horrible precedent.
These are very binary, and binary to me is very inconsistent with a healthy.
It is. It's rigid thought,
point
right?
of view, right? Yeah, it's the opposite of fluidity, with what we're preaching here. We've taken on tariffs. We've probably pissed a few people off. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't care anymore.
It's time. We've got to start saying what needs to be said while we still can. If you don't understand the gravity of it, you're probably a cult. Anyway, let's wrap it up for today.
All right, buddy.
Hope your day goes better tomorrow. Just stay off the news.
Yeah.
And we'll be back with you guys
very soon.
Thanks.